I went to Nepal when I was, how old was I?
19, 20,
Yeah,
something like that.
a
No.
long time ago.
You were 25.
25. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
My brother was living
Well,
there.
probably, yeah, something like that. Because I remember I turned 21 while you were gone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
And of course, Namaste was the greeting there. And most of us have seen it, I think, by this time.
Mm-hmm.
It's common even in our culture. And but sometimes we can wonder what that is. And I think it holds something really special.
Yeah. It's kind of a nice thing to do. And I also think it's a nice thing to do mentally.
Because it's not just nice for the other person you're saying,
Right.
It does something inside of us.
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, that is true, but that's not exactly what I was saying. I was saying that, and we can also talk about this further because we haven't. Let's first say kind of what Namaste means to us.
Sure.
And then I can explain what I was
By the way, we're in our barn.
Yeah.
And so this is a new thing in our life. And there's a horse out in the field behind us, which we talked about last week. And we'll probably be...
Mm-hmm. Maybe sometimes we can put some footage in of him as time goes on. Namaste.
Namaste. So...
how would you describe it?
This is just a way... I think the usual translation is that I see or honor the Godhead within you.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of similar, I guess, in that thought that when I do a namaste to a person or a horse or a forest, I'm trying to bridge a gap. You ever feel like, if you felt this mystical sensation at any point in your life where you felt as if you felt your unity with everything, and you felt your divine mother nature, then sometimes you maybe are feeling like you're talking to someone else, and maybe you're trying to talk about something and tempers are a little up, and you feel like, if I could just talk to them in their divine mother nature, if I could just say, hey, you're divine mother, so am I, and snap us both out of the illusion for a moment, all the human troubles and drama and things that we create would disappear because we would both have that clarity. And so to me, it's a deep, deep connection that kind of cuts through our usual sense of being an isolated ego interacting with other isolated
like we're little boxes wandering around bumping into each other. And I think this can tie in nicely with what I was trying to say, which is that I like to namaste people, but sometimes when I'm out and about, I like to namaste people mentally in my mind. And I think this speaks to what you were saying. If we could just connect with another person, sort of from behind the veil, like tear the veil away and just be, right there with each other. And I feel as though I'm a person who sometimes needs to be reminded of that. So if I am at an event, let's say, that maybe I feel obligated to go to, but didn't want to, really, I wouldn't be doing that. I'd, be at home gardening or something. I can help myself to get into a different perspective if I start namasteing in my head the people that are there. And then I can take it even a step further and could be maybe at that same event in conversation with someone who I don't really agree with, and I'm thinking, that's not really how I see things. I can namaste them and say, hey, look, I'm going to acknowledge that you are something beyond what I'm judging you as. Again, it's my judgment, but it begins to kind of get this feel for me of, oh, everything's not as you think it is, Rebecca. And it allows a more open door to, let's say, meeting someone or being someplace that you have already judged. And then if you're namasteing, to have something happen where you think, wow, I never thought that so-and-so from, the office would have ever had the same, heartfelt connection So that's a way that I like to use Namaste, to sort of begin to open and get beyond judgment.
And let's come out and just say, when you do that mindset, it's magical.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of someone that I contacted recently in Facebook Messenger to get some horse equipment. And I try to do that same thing. So in engaging with somebody, I think I want to engage with their divine mother nature. And then people end up being so oddly friendly and giving you things and going out of their way. And what I think one of the most powerful things that this points to is I'm going to call it aversion. There's a sense of aversion that we humans tend to have to certain people, to certain things, to certain places. And I certainly don't feel free of that. We went to that roller skating rink for somebody's birthday party the other night, which was just an interesting experience.
I'm grateful that we did it.
Yes.
I'm very grateful that we did it. But I could have been in a very judgmental place, because in general, we are hoping that the microphone is not catching all this wind. It's an extremely windy day, to extreme wind, as in your umbrella would flip inside out.
I'm just going to bring it up
here. Yeah, that's okay. This is our fuzzy dead cat. So, it's dark, no windows, lots of loud music, lots of people everywhere. And some people, that's the coolest thing. For us in the past, that is a more challenging environment for us to go into. And yet there were a lot of good lessons from it. And I think in Namasting, even an experience, we can start to say, hey, this I allow, at least for the possibility that this could be more than I'm judging it to be right now.
Yes. And that when we have aversion of any kind, usually we're not seeing the full picture. We see somebody, some situation, and that aversion comes up and it acts like a filter.
Yes.
And we often can't see beyond our own judgment.
That can happen in good things too.
It can happen with good things too.
Oh, he's so amazing. Gosh, I'm not sure why he didn't come pick me up when I had a flat tire and he was just next door. But it must have been something. I don't know. We do it both ways.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not necessarily an aversion, but it's kind of an aversion to looking at, I guess the way I look at it is that Namaste is I see you, or I want to see you. And I recognize that you're more than what you seem to be.
Outside of my judgment. I see you outside of my judgment.
I see you, or at least, I'm trying. And I think we long to be seen and to be given the benefit of the doubt. And so to me, it's really nice to have a way to get beyond that. Oh, well, I don't know why they did that nice thing. It must have been a fluke.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, to harken back to the skating, even though as an adult this was not the most pleasant experience, as a kid I went almost every weekend to a similar place. I loved it. And so being able to see, even within myself, that there were different ways to look at this experience. And wow, the wind is powerful.
Yeah, it's coming right through the little tiny cracks.
Ooh. And with aversion, closing off parts of the world to us, we can sometimes kind of willpower our way out of that by saying, Namaste, I'm going to really try to see there's some good in this person or this situation. But we can also tap into what I'm going to call grace. And that's when we see that person or that situation as Divine Mother. We wink at it. We recognize our own limited viewpoint. And then a situation can transform to become more curious or wonder-filled or wonderful. Then is even when we use namaste in what I call its lesser form, which is a willpower-based form.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right that there's a magic that happens anytime we can suddenly go outside of our perspective. That's a really challenging thing to do, is to ask yourself to get outside your own beliefs, perspectives, the way you see the truth of how things are. And that deeper form of namaste is awesome because it kind of goes, oh, you know what? I know what's happening. I'm in a situation where I'm judging everything. I think I know what's what. And if I truly namaste this and I say, hey, okay, I'm going to see the divine in this. Maybe I don't know everything. It's a really powerful way of starting to exercise a flexibility of maybe I don't actually know. And reminds me of the time we went square dancing.
Oh, yeah.
I think we've talked about that before. But you were just like, okay, that sounds like my idea of...
Heck.
Exactly. And we went, and it actually ended up being really fun. We were laughing, we were breathing, and it was a completely different experience than I think we both pictured. And I don't think it could have happened if we had remained kind of immovable in our aversion.
Because we can color any experience with our aversion. We can go into something that we're really sure is going to be negative. Mm-hmm. It can actually be a super positive experience, but we still will see it as negative no matter what, because we've already made up our mind.
Yeah, that is true. I think once the ego decides something, it's going to fight really hard for it, because I think the ego just wants to be right. And Namaste kind of asks us not to be anything but open and curious. But it is a really nice feeling if you can access and tap into that deeper sort of Namaste grace. Because suddenly you don't have to be attached in the same way. It's in a way a form of non-attachment, but still presence.
I think when you said, Rebecca, that it's difficult to face up to or get over those aversions, you're talking about why this Namaste concept can be one of the most powerful things to bring us forward on a mystical path. Because often when we think of, okay, what is my ego? Who am I? We tend to think of the things we like. Oh, pizza and nature and this and this. But the things that often lodge us...
I just thought you picked pizza first.
It's all about pizza, baby.
Just not expecting that. That's so funny. Okay. I apologize. Continue.
But the thing that really lodges us in our sense of ego are our aversions. If we look carefully and we really feel into our hearts, when we are fighting against something, it's often when we feel most stuck in ourselves, when we're taking the world most seriously.
Yes, I was going to use that word.
Yeah, and it feels heavy and real, and we feel our little self fighting against that thing that we have the aversion to. And so in looking at the things that we hold aversions to, in trying to namaste them, to let go into them, become curious about them, there's something really special waiting for us. Now, does this mean we're supposed to go and, like, I have an aversion to heroin, should I start shooting up? I kind of have an aversion to skydiving, should I go skydiving? There's all these things that other humans are engaging in that I'm not, that I have aversions to. Am I supposed to just go for it?
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't think so. We're talking about some things that don't actually, that physical language, words can't really express. And I think it's sort of the way some people can view anarchy, and some people have one view of it and some people have another view of it. And oddly, they're almost opposite views. I don't think that opening yourself to seeing that you don't know what's available for you in an experience doesn't necessarily mean you have to suddenly go against, then that's almost like the opposite of namaste, is trying to go into experiences that, but I will say that in the end, as humans, we are on this level where we judge, okay, a heroin addiction is bad. And I don't necessarily want to say this because this sounds like, oh, she's just, supporting heroin addiction. But I want to say that I think from a perspective beyond my own, there isn't so much that is bad and that is good, but there's experience. And I will use the analogy of a predator and prey. We can always want the deer or the cute little thing to get away, but then we are left without the wolves and we are left without the predators. And some people might say, oh, that's great. However, we can see what happens systemically without all the parts that are necessary. And so, again, I'm not trying to say heroin addiction is necessary. I'm just trying to say that I know in myself, I have a judgment about what is good and what is bad for me. And yet, I think if I could expand back or bigger, there's something that happens when you are open to accepting what is, and then you have a place to move forward. And I guess I think about people who feel like they've done something wrong or feel like they are not worthy. And I think that comes from those judgments of bad and of good. And I feel as though Namaste asks us to enter kind of almost more of a natural or divine mother mind state, where if the wolf eats the rabbit, is that bad? If the rabbit gets away and the wolf pups die, is that bad? Why do we put it into bad and to good? Namaste asks to go beyond bad and good.
You know what? I'm glad you're going this deep because...
Okay. So should I have said all of that? Yeah. And there's so much to try to say and talk about in it. In so many places that what I've said could be misconstrued. So that is where I say, try to namaste me in what I'm saying and hear more with your heart and your intuition and things than just words that are being said. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this being ultimately a non-dual path, we're asked at some point in our spiritual journey to make that hard step of stepping fully back from our judgment and saying, if I could just be in my divine mother self, is it possible? Just ask if it's possible that you would find as much value in being the wolf and feeling your teeth sink into the rabbit and being the rabbit and feeling the experience of being taken by the fox or the wolf. And likewise, maybe Divine Mother can find equal value in the experience of being in a little room with no windows, taking heroin.
I thought you were going to say roller skating.
Being in a walk in the woods with a very clear mind. So that's really hard for a human judging mind to do. And it doesn't mean that we have to, in this lifetime, in this incarnation, go and try all those things.
Or even be okay with them in our life, Go ahead, sorry.
No. But it does mean, I think, that when we encounter those things, we'll interact with them differently.
Yeah.
So we worked with somebody that had an heroin addiction at one point. And we could have come from the perspective of, you are so messed up and you got to fix yourself.
Right.
And I remember that we sat down and said to him, if I'm recalling this correctly, you're in a space where you're going to be loved without judgment. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if you get over your addiction in your time with us or not. Mm-hmm. You're going to be loved equally, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And I think that had a success that went beyond what could happen when someone feels like they are wrong for their behaviors. Because most of us are lodged in our ego, and our ego does not want to feel wrong. And so as we interact, stuck in our little boxes that you talked about in the beginning, interacting with each other, which is the experience most of us are having most of the time, we very much limit that experience when it is so tied in judgment. And we have really no hope of breaking free of those boxes as long as we're tied into that judgment. So here we have this tool, this Namaste, that can help us to see the world differently.
I'm really glad that you pointed all of that out, because I think what I had wanted to say after all of what I had said previously was that to recognize all of that and to be able to start to, I call it flexibility, to have a flexible sort of mind or spirit or whatever, it is an important exercise. However, it is okay for us to circle back around and for me to say, I don't actually really need to ever go skydiving, and that's okay. And as you pointed out, getting into that space where there's flexibility allows us to interact with people differently, and it allows us to give them permission to change. I think when we become really locked into the aversion viewpoint, you said it yourself in the beginning, sometimes there's nothing that can happen that can change our mind because our mind is locked into that. We lose the ability to have a more meaningful connection, a more meaningful relationship with the world, with other people, because the aversion way only allows for one thing. And the Namaste way doesn't necessarily condone whatever is going on or whatever our viewpoint is of, but it simply says, hey, maybe there's a different path forward. It's the creative ingenuity side that allows for different possibilities. And if we're just stuck in one way, no, there's only one way to solve this problem, and it's not working, and we're just banging our head again and again and again, maybe we step back and we say, what if I just said, there's a million ways to solve this problem. Let's just try a whole bunch of them. And so I feel like that's a good analogy. The Namaste allows us to enter the creative ingenuity, flexibility, possibility realm. Wow, who knew there was so much talk about Namaste?
How do we get started? Right, we want to try this out.
Yeah.
And I think like many things, one place to start is the easy place with maybe your family, somebody you really love, or elements of nature.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have a favorite tree or something that you view all the time that fills you up, it's very nice to Namaste something that you don't have any aversions or negative judgments or things you have to work on, and just to feel that exchange.
So something you can love without judgment. And give that Namaste. You can say it in your mind, or you can do it and just say it with your words and put a smile on your face. To me, that's very important because it just changes our attitude that we're approaching with.
And our brain chemicals.
Yeah. And I mean, a tree is a perfect thing. And Namaste it and see it as Divine Mother becoming that thing. And if you choose to, then interact with it a little bit more. Go up and touch it or feel it or smell it, or just stand there and appreciate it for a moment, the way the light is playing through the leaves. This soaking into that other thing and doing it in such a way that you're falling in love with it. Love is our answer here. Because if we can truly fall in love, if we're in a state of love, we don't feel ourself. Love becomes so selfless, if it can be that true agape, that then the barrier between that box and this box disappears, and we find that we're not boxes at all. That's one place to start.
Yeah, that's a really neat thing to think about, because if I look back over some experiences that I've had, especially in nature, that dissolution of the boxes, of the illusion of the boxes, is something I can remember. I remember those moments where I don't feel like I'm me per se, and I don't feel like that's out there. It's just all happening right now, and that's such a great feeling to start cultivating more regularly.
And then I think just work your way up. I said family members, that's maybe the next place to start, because for most of us, we love our family members, but we have judgments about them, and we may have aversions regarding them.
Things we want them to do differently,
yeah,
etc., etc. Places where we think we're right and they're not.
Right. And that is probably the dynamic within your family, where if you can start cultivating a less judgmental love, it will do the most to transform your experience of life in this world. And so very well worth it to try to start loving your family.
Yeah. Mother Teresa said something like that. Do you want to know the single best way to change the world? This is just paraphrasing. Go home and love your family.
Yeah. Go home and love your family to change the world.
Yeah.
How does that make sense? But it does, you see, I'm sure.
Then you can always do the extra credit homework.
Yeah. McDonald's for me.
McDonald's.
Trying somebody that's really tough.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be that tough, but just be, if you're in an experience you think, I just really don't want to be here and this is really sucky, just for a moment say, okay, can I step back? Can I not be in my pair of spectacles?
Yeah.
And how does that then change things? And be a little bit Sherlock Holmes-ish. Try it for the sake of true experimentation and curiosity and wondering, if I really do this, and you got to really do it then, does it actually have any effect? And maybe it will and maybe it won't, but it's kind of fun to just see what happens.
All right, friends, share with us your experiences. And it would be really fun to hear your thoughts on this one.
All right.
All right. So much love to you all.
Mwah.